Daybreak, Jakarta. The proud men and women of the Navy are fighting for freedom. But you're in Lubbock, Texas, hosing stains off a monument.
And now,
what is this?
I know you're gonna dig this.
This is the Flatland Sports Podcast.
It's Division I football! It's the Big 12! In here,
How are you doing from across the Great Plains of West Texas? This is the Flatland Sports Podcast, free and available worldwide on YouTube, Spotify, and anywhere you get podcasts. Thank you so much for making the Flatland Sports Podcast your first listen of the day and your source for shallow, fairly obvious observations, nuggets of useless information, and maybe some sports commentary. I don't know. We'll see. And while you're here, please don't forget to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel or wherever you're listening from so that you never miss a moment. Also, want to support the show? Step into the Flatland Sports store. Grab some of our original t-shirts like You Look Poor and Bet on Tech and Too Scared of Texas Tech or Another Hypothetical Win for the SEC. Plus, check out the Flatland Sports hats and other gear. Support the show and represent the Great Plains of West Texas. Visit the Flatland Sports store today. The link is in the description. We are back after what I assume was an incredibly uneventful summer. We'll reset the deck for the upcoming season, and it's Monday, so that means the good, the bad, and the ugly, and much more. But did anything happen this summer? I seemed like a pretty quiet summer to me. Obviously, somehow Texas Tech managed to turn the summer into one of the most eventful off seasons in recent program history. We found out where college football's moral line is. Apparently, it's not murder. It's not felonies. It's not assault. It's betting on games that you didn't play in. And if you're Texas Tech, apparently the entire country becomes the NCAA's moral compass. Double TDS was in full swing. Texas Tech derangement syndrome came coast to coast after roughly 150 years of college football scandals, cheating, recruiting violations, academic scandals, and actual crime. America apparently decided, okay, now we've had enough, and Texas Tech is where we draw the line. Of course, I'm talking about the Brendan Sorsby saga. Brendan Sorsby was supposed to be the guy. He transferred from Cincinnati, had Power 4 experience, was an experienced Power 4 starting quarterback, multi-million-dollar NIL deal. It was reported to, I've seen $3 million, I've seen upwards of $6 million. I think it landed really around $5 million. By every possible metric was the best, not just the best quarterback, but the best available player out of the transfer portal that year and was expected to lead Texas Tech into the 2026 season for another Big 12 championship and hopefully a national championship. And then everything blew up. Court documents showed that Brendan Sorsby placed thousands of bets totaling of at least $90,000 between 2022 and early 2026. The bets covered just about anything from college football, college basketball, Major League Baseball, UFC, tennis, NASCAR, international sports, even the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. The major issue is that while at Indiana, Sorsby placed bets involving Indiana football and Indiana teammates. He was a redshirt scout team player at the time, and there was no evidence. And also the NCAA admitted, of course, there was no evidence of game fixing or any attempt to manipulate games, and the NCAA during the hearing acknowledged that none of Sorsby's actions were actually detrimental to the integrity of the game. Sorsby acknowledged that he had a gambling addiction, entered treatment. So Texas Tech, of course, declared him ineligible. Sorsby sued the NCAA. Everybody assumed that the injunction would get denied and everybody would go about their business. Wrong. A judge granted the temporary injunction, allowed him to play after a 2-game suspension, which I admittedly thought was a little light. I was thinking 4 was fair. The NCAA appealed. The Big 12 pushed back. Everybody lost their collective expletive deleted. Texas Tech defended its support of Sorsby while emphasizing his treatment and health. At no point, by the way, did they ever actually say they intended to play him after this. Texas Tech was very careful. I've talked about this before. It seemed like the Texas Tech administration and the football program was stuck between a rock and a hard place of, first of all, wanting to actually support Sorsby. He's a real person. He's a real kid that they cared about. Wanted to support him. Also needed to really toe the line of okay, how do we navigate this PR mess, as well as what happens, what could trigger a potential lawsuit. Eventually, Texas Tech and Brendan Sorsby parted ways. Texas Tech did the integrity move. It was not influenced in any way by the mass pandemonium from around the world. Brendan Sorsby attempted to pursue the NFL supplemental draft. The NFL declined to hold one, and eventually they reached a settlement with the NFL and the NFL Players Association. That's right, Brendan Sorsby sued, Brendan Sorsby might be a good name. Brendan Sorsby sued the NFL Players Association. He is now eligible for the 2027 NFL draft. He will sit out the 2026 season. I expect he will probably go undrafted, wind up on a team, and have a pretty solid NFL career. Who knows? Of course, the bigger issue is the Sorsby saga became bigger than Texas Tech. It raised questions about sports betting and college athletes, gambling addiction, NIL money, NCAA enforcement, which doesn't exist, by the way. Spoiler alert. Competitive integrity, and whether college football has any idea how to handle this new era. Another spoiler, they have no clue. Not only that, but the NCAA is clearly, as we've seen from injunction after injunction after injunction after injunction over the summer, no authority to do really anything other than just put a logo on the basketball tournament. But apparently, that wasn't enough off-season drama for Texas Tech. Steve Sarkisian made some comments during the summer. Sarkisian was speaking about strength of schedule, the almighty metric when it comes to the college football playoff. Not the wins or losses, of course, but the strength of the schedule and strength of the record, and the differences between the SEC and the Big 12, two programs that did not win a single Power 4 playoff game last year. And then he took a very obvious shot at Texas Tech. His comment was, and I quote, "There's a team out in our state that plays in another conference that has a schedule that I would argue, if I played with our 2s and 3s, we can go undefeated, and they'll probably make the college football playoff this year." Never mind the fact that Texas actually played in this conference and couldn't win in most seasons. In fact, all but one of 12 seasons couldn't win with their ones. He didn't say Texas Tech, which I did have a lot of Longhorns in my mentions talking about, well, he didn't actually say Texas Tech. Why are you assuming Texas Tech? He didn't talk. He wasn't talking about Texas. Well, who was he talking about? Talking about Baylor? Maybe he was talking about Abilene Christian, which, to be fair, is a team that might make a run in the FCS playoffs. So maybe I would concede that, yes, Steve Sarkisian, the Texas Longhorns, if given Abilene Christian's schedule, could go undefeated with their 2s and 3s. But clearly talking about Texas Tech, he acknowledged later, by the way, that he was in fact talking about the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And even if he hadn't acknowledged, he didn't have to. Texas Tech had just won the Big 12, made the college football playoff. Everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. So Joey McGuire wasn't interested in debating it. His response was, okay, schedule us. Spot the ball. Texas Tech was scheduled to play Abilene Christian in week 1. Texas scheduled to play Texas State in week 1. Joey McGuire said those schools could work out a game between them to make a week 1 matchup happen. And the idea, of course, Texas Tech buys out ACU, Texas buys out Texas State, and the Red Raiders and the Longhorns duke it out in week 1, either Lubbock, Arlington, or wherever. The message was simple. You think our schedule is so easy? Well, come play us. We'll see who is the better team. Then Texas Tech booster Cody Campbell entered the conversation. Campbell said, hey, you know what? We'll up the ante for you. We'll pay the buyouts. We'll make this game happen. You don't have to pay us in. All you have to do is show up. You want to prove your point about our schedule? Let's play. And at this point, it wasn't just message board trash talk. Texas Tech was publicly saying, we're willing to make this happen. By the way, here's a pathway to make it happen. By the way, all you have to do, Texas, is say yes. And then show up. That's it. And then, of course, Texas and Texas Tech will not play week 1 this season. Steve Sarkisian's comments started a fire. Joey McGuire threw some gasoline on it. Campbell brought a flamethrower. And somehow there's still no football game. And I heard a lot of Texas fans doing Olympic level mental gymnastics. The argument became Joey McGuire and Texas Tech are all talk. They're bluffing. They knew Texas would say no. They would never actually expect Texas to play. In fact, if they thought Texas was going to play, they wouldn't have even done this in the first place. And, you know, there's a very easy way to determine whether Joey McGuire is bluffing. Call him. Play the game, spot the ball. That's it. That's the entire test. If Joey McGuire is bluffing, if Texas accepts the challenge, then Texas Tech either has to walk it back or actually play the game. Suddenly McGuire has to put his money where his mouth is, but we all know Joey McGuire was in fact not bluffing. If Texas Tech accepts, Texas Tech and Tech are playing in week 1, guaranteed, and everybody finds out whether Texas's 2s and 3s could really beat the reigning Big 12 champion. So, of course, that was the beginning of the Texas Tech scheduling drama of the summer. And I have to say too, before we get into the next part, what's happened to college football, by the way? This is where I want to step away from the jokes for a second. I've heard arguments from Longhorn and Aggie fans. We're not rivals, okay? We've already had enough tough games on our schedule, okay? Texas Tech isn't a big game. We don't need to play them, okay. But here's the part that bothers me more than Texas Tech getting criticized, more than anything else, really. What happened to the culture of college football? What happened to the neighborhood backyard pickup game aspect of the sport? That's what college football used to feel like. We had 2 schools in the same state. Fan bases know each other. Fan bases hate each other. Their players know each other. Their alumni work together. In my case, I'm married to a family of Texas alumni. Their fans live next door to each other. Everybody wants to see one thing. They want to see these 2 teams settle it on the field. And that's what made rivalries fun. You didn't need a playoff implication. You didn't need a TV contract. You don't need a strength of schedule metric. You just needed to say, I don't like you. You don't like us. Let's play a football game and earn the bragging rights. Texas Tech and Texas played more than 50 times. They're in the same state. They've had memorable games. They've had controversial games. They've had massive implications. Their fan bases absolutely know each other. And apparently we're at the point where one coach will publicly say that another team's schedule is so easy his backups could go undefeated. The other coach says, okay, well, play us. Let's settle it on the field. In fact, and then a booster steps in and say, hey, we'll pay for it to happen. You just need to show up, Texas. And the game still doesn't happen. That is everything wrong with college football summed up, in my opinion. Maybe there's legitimate business reasons. Maybe there's legitimate scheduling reasons, whatever. Maybe Texas really does they have Ohio State in the next week. Of course, they're going to play the mental gymnastics of, well, Texas Tech is a cream puff. Texas Tech's a cupcake. They're an easy win. Okay, so why don't you play? Well, we've got Ohio State next week. We don't, we can't be playing a tough game before we go to Ohio State. But there's something lost when the answer to a challenge from a rival, and even if it's not a rival, Texas, whatever, you don't want to admit that Texas Tech's a rival. A challenge from another school with a football team, and your response is, it doesn't make sense to us to schedule. No, we're good. College football used to be built around those games. Miami built up their program by saying, hey, we'll play anybody. We'll go anywhere. We'll do anything, whatever. Florida State did the same thing. Both of those programs are on the brink of extinction. And they came in with this mentality of, we'll play anybody. We'll put anyone on the schedule. So who wants it? And it's not just Texas, by the way. McGuire, on an interview, said that Texas Tech has been trying to find a major non-conference opponent after Oregon rescheduled. And they had probably the most legitimate reason to reschedule, so I won't give them too much flack. Oregon rescheduled, but NC State bowed out. Mississippi State bowed out. Texas Tech is sitting with empty spaces in 27 and 28. And Tech had 6 months of discussions with USC to fill those spots. USC backed out at the last second just about 2 weeks ago. According to Joe McGuire, Texas Tech reportedly had legitimate discussions with Texas. They said no. Texas A&M said no. USC, of course, 6 months of discussions. It was about to happen, and then they decided they were good. NC State was a team that was on the schedule. They backed out. Mississippi State, also previously scheduled. They were affected by the SEC's move to a 9-game conference schedule. Now, they had 3 cupcakes on that schedule. They could have dropped one of them, decided not to. This is Texas Tech, of course, getting criticized for having a weak schedule. Texas, fine, we'll play. Hey, Texas, you want to play? No? Okay, well, your schedule's full. It was a lot of moving parts. Sure. Hey, USC, you want to play? They've got no one on the schedule for 27-28. They talk for 6 months. USC, no game. Texas Tech reaches out to A&M. Hey, big rivalry, a lot of in-state interest. This would do numbers from a TV standpoint, by the way. You want to play? By the way, you have an empty spot in 27 and 28. No game. And so you have to ask, if everybody's complaining about Texas Tech's schedule, why doesn't anybody want to actually play Texas Tech? And this is where Joey McGuire is right. He's talked about Texas Tech embracing the role of the villain. Well, fine, let's be the villain. This is the theme of 2026, apparently. Everybody wants to hate Texas Tech. Fine. Everybody wants to say Texas Tech's schedule is easy. Well, come play us. If you think the schedule's easy and you want us to play a real team, we'll play you. We're here. Everybody wants to say Texas Tech isn't ready for the big time. Well, come find out. We're here in Lubbock. We've got an international airport. You can be here in 2 hours from just about any part of the country. Come find out. And you know what? If you don't want to come to us, we'll come to you. Because the best way to answer all of this isn't just back and forth on social media. It's not on a press conference. It's not on a podcast. It's on a football field, because this is sports, and that's how sports is supposed to work. So we'll move on to another edition of how Texas Tech is ruining the sport, which has been the theme of the summer. Tommy Castellanos. Because apparently the offseason needed one more chapter, and above all, Texas Tech needed one more quarterback, because our quarterback, for reasons unbeknownst to me, is no longer available. Tommy Castellanos is reportedly headed toward Texas Tech, and yes, here we go again. But let's get away from the circus, and we'll talk about the actual football player. So who is Tommy Castellanos? Castellanos is a dual threat quarterback. He played at UCF, Boston College, Florida State. Transferred to Florida State for the 25 season, started all games. Now, Florida State did abysmal that year, but as we know at Texas Tech, the quarterback doesn't get to play all positions, including defense. In 2025, Castellanos had 2,760 passing yards, 15 passing touchdowns, only 9 interceptions. Had a 58.3% completion rate, 557 rushing yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, 3,317 total yards, 24 total touchdowns where he touched the ball. He was Florida State's leading rusher as well. Not having a running back, by the way, really makes it hard to win games. His 557 rushing yards were the most by a Seminole quarterback in a single season. He averaged more than 15 yards per completion. What did he do at Florida State? Castellanos, he wasn't just the centerpiece of the offense. He was the offense. He started every game through for over 2,000 yards, ran for over 500, accounted for 24 touchdowns. He helped Florida State open the season with one of the biggest wins in the country, the upset of Alabama, who was a future college football playoff team, regardless of whether they deserved to be there or not. Castellanos earned national recognition for that performance at the end of the season. Seminoles, named him Offensive MVP, gave him the Bobby Bowden Leadership Award, and he was off to the NFL as far as we know, until everyone realized that the NCAA has no authority to do anything, and Castellanos still had 1 year of eligibility left. Now, what does he bring to Texas Tech? A lot of mobility. He is a legitimate rushing threat. He's capable of turning broken plays into positive plays. He's dangerous in design quarterback runs. More specifically, though, he has experience. He's been a Power 4 starter. He's played in big environments. He's played against elite competition. He's already experienced the pressure of being the guy. And again, Florida State's season wasn't great, but somebody has to play defense too. We saw this in 2015 with Patrick Mahomes at the helm. He's not simply a running back, a runner playing quarterback. In 2025, his passing production shows he can make explosive plays through the air. His ability to extend plays adds another dimension to the offense. And depth, of course, is the biggest reason why this move makes sense for Texas Tech. And on that note, I need to get something very clear. Will Hammond is quarterback 1. He is the starting quarterback. He's healthy. He is going to start week 1 against Abilene Christian. This is Will Hammond's football team. The ACL recovery has gone very well, very fast. Typically, it takes about almost a full year to recover, and he was there about, I'd say, 2/3 of the way through summer. There's no significant setbacks reported, so Tommy Castellanos isn't coming to Lubbock because Texas Tech doesn't know whether Will Hammond can play. And despite popular belief, despite the reporting of most major news outlet and sports reporter in the country, Tommy Castellanos is not coming to Lubbock because Texas Tech hates Will Hammond. He's coming to Lubbock, Texas to play at Texas Tech because Texas Tech needs a legitimate backup. When you lost Sorsby, and let's reset the deck for just a quick second. If Will Hammond was 100% healthy, if he had never injured, if he had never torn his ACL, Texas Tech goes after a quarterback exactly like Tommy Castellanos. Joey McGuire said this much in a press conference. They still needed a backup. They still needed a good depth piece behind quarterback. Now, when Will Hammond was injured, they went after someone who could come in and be a legitimate starter, and that's how they ended up with Brendan Sorsby. But a quarterback like Tommy Castellanos was 100% the target if Will Hammond is healthy. And so Hammond will start, Castellanos will back him up, and Texas Tech has multiple proven Power 4 starters in its quarterback room. And of course, the biggest concern is if something were to happen to Hammond. Castellanos already started an entire Power 4 season. He's already produced at a high level. He's not walking into Lubbock with 5, total passes in his college career. He's he's done this on the Power 4 level, as I've mentioned before. He's not coming up from the G5 ranks. He's not coming up from the Division II ranks. You know they're good, but you don't know how they're going to respond to tougher defense. And now we've come full circle. Think about everything Texas Tech dealt with this summer. The expected starting quarterback disappears because of a gambling scandal. The program becomes the center of national debate and pretty much stays there forever. Texas Tech gets criticized for its schedule. Steve Sarkisian takes a shot. Joey McGuire says, schedule us. Joey McGuire says that to basically anybody who will listen. Texas Tech says USC, A&M, and others have declined scheduling opportunities, still trying to figure out a Power 4 opponent in 27 and 28. And now it ends with Texas Tech adding a somewhat controversial player as they get former Florida State starting quarterback who was in the NFL draft, exhausted his eligibility, but got the dreaded words, a temporary injunction, to come back for the 2026 season. And that is the summer, because apparently Texas Tech managed to spend an entire summer ruining college football without doing anything. Let me know in the comments what you think. Has Texas Tech officially become college football's villain? Is the criticism of Texas Tech's schedule fair if the program is actively trying to schedule better opponents? And what happened to old school college football culture where rivals and schools simply just settled it on the field? When we come back, we will have the good, the bad, and the ugly for Flatland Sports. I am Christopher Johnston. Back for one more. This is the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll start with the good.
It's good. It's good. It's good.
Texas Tech basketball is loaded this season. Let's recap how we got there because the roster looks a whole lot different than it did at the beginning of summer. The Red Raiders brought in Cruz Davis from Hofstra, Dra Gibbs-Lawhorn from Indiana, giving Grant McCaslam some experienced pieces in the backcourt. Then came Jamichael Stillwell from UCF, transfer who gives Texas Tech another physical front court player. And then the big news started rolling in. There was a temporary injunction that was granted to the class of 2022. We've talked about it in previous videos, but just to recap, basically the NCAA changed the rule, gave players basically 5 for 5. You get 5 years to play 5 years. End of story. No exceptions. No anything else. And for whatever reason, and I'm assuming it's just the NCAA trying to just get a shred of any control that they can find, they did not include players who actually would have a 5th year of eligibility this season. And so, players, of course, sued. Players, of course, were granted the temporary injunction. And now Darrion Williams is coming back to Lubbock after spending last season at North Carolina State. Darrion Williams will return. Then Donovan Atwell announced his return, bringing back one of the best shooters in college basketball. He was another player that is taking advantage of the temporary injunction for the class of 22. Texas Tech also added Bassala Bagayoko, 6'10", international big who's already played professional basketball in Spain. So a lot more talent than I thought there would be a few months ago. A few months ago I was actually concerned because Grant McCasland had missed on some recruits. It seemed like you weren't really getting the guys that you were trying to get. You weren't really making any progress. And I was looking at the roster wondering where the next wave of talent is coming from, or is this going to be a season where you just don't have it? And that has been a staple of Grant McCasland years so far, is that you have some really talented players on your roster, but almost no depth. And in this case, you maybe had depth, but you were running a little short of talent. Then the fifth-year eligibility situation completely changed the landscape, and that raises an interesting question, at least for me. Is this did Grant McCasland get bailed out by this? Was this something where they were striking out on player left and right, and then this happened and they were able to pick up some huge pieces out of the portal at the end after teams had pretty much filled up their rosters? Or was that the plan all along? Was it a little light? Did they kind of hold off on it because they knew this was coming down the pipeline and thought, well, let's wait and see if we can get Darrion Williams and Donovan Atwell and maybe a few other pieces? Did Grant McCasland know there's a chance that these guys could get another year? I have no idea, and frankly, I don't really care. Because whatever the plan was, Texas Tech now has one of the best rosters in college basketball. There is one big caveat, though. The NCAA did win an appeal in the fifth-year eligibility case, so Donovan Atwell's status is still a little uncertain. Texas Tech has announced his return, but the legal situation is still developing. Basically, Donovan Atwell will need to file for another temporary injunction on the state level. And if you're asking me today, I would bet a lot of money that Donovan Atwell is playing Texas Tech basketball in 26-27. So, assuming Atwell is eligible and JT Toppin is healthy, here's the starting five that I am looking at. That is Cruz Davis at point guard, Donovan Atwell at shooting guard, Darrion Williams at the 3, JT Toppin at the 4, and Jamichael Stillwell at the 5. And then you got Gibbs-Lawhorn, Bagayoko, Demarion Dennis, Dakari Spear, and the rest of the roster coming off the bench. Probably, first of all, one of the most talented basketball teams that Grant McCasland has had, but this should come as music to Texas Tech fans' ears. This is by far the deepest basketball team that Grant McCasland has had. And the funny thing is, we went from wondering if Texas Tech would have enough talent at all to wondering how Grant McCasland is going to find minutes for everybody, how to keep everyone happy, and that's a pretty good problem to have. So whatever happened this offseason, whether it was the plan, whether it was good fortune, maybe a little bit of both, Texas Tech basketball is in a really good spot. Let's do one more good.
Jimmy, what?
It's all good, man.
Texas Tech football starts the season ranked number 12. It's the highest ranking since 1977, in which the Red Raiders were ranked number 8. They were coming off a really good 1976 season where they finished 10-2. Had high hopes for the 1977 season, but Rodney Allison got injured early, I think by a cheap shot from a Texas A&M Aggie. The last time Texas Tech was ranked number 12 was 2008. We all know how that season went. The Red Raiders climbed up as high as 2 in the rankings and settled again at number 12 after dropping the last 2 games or dropping a game to Oklahoma and then again to Ole Miss in the Cotton Bowl. That was when Graham Harrell broke a bone in his hand and Michael Crabtree, I believe, was injured as well. Last season, Texas Tech started 24, of course, finished number 7. That was the highest ranking in program history. They won the Big 12, made the Orange Bowl and the College Football Playoff, and we hope to get back there this season. A back-to-back Big 12 win and another College Football Playoff appearance. And, of course, if you're listening to everybody on the national media, then Texas Tech's schedule is a cream puff, and so it should happen regardless. I don't know if I believe that. I think if we learned anything from the Big 12, whatever you think is going to happen is clearly not going to happen. You've got a really good Houston team on the schedule, and I watch out for TCU. And Texas Tech and TCU on Thanksgiving night might be one of the games of the year, one of the most anticipated games of the year. Just in my opinion right now. Hopefully I get proved wrong and TCU stumbles into that game, 4-7. Let's get a bad.
Well, I think it's not good.
Want to be a little more specific?
There's good and there's not good. This is not good.
So, history was being made. This was reported by On3 Sports, I believe, and if I got that wrong, I apologize. But history is being made. The Cleveland Browns are waiving tight end Daquan Wright. And why is that bad? I'm not a Browns fan. I could care less what happens to the Browns. If he clears waivers, he is already signed and has an agreement in place for the 26th season to play for the Louisiana State University Tigers under Lane Kiffin, per agents Drew Rosenhaus and Kyle Lincoln. So Wright, if this plays out, will be the first player to ever play for an active NFL team and actually get minutes in an NFL preseason game, and then go back to playing college. I think of that Steve Buscemi scene. How do you do, fellow kids? Now, this might be me. This might just be my own personal opinion. I have a lot of those. This seems detrimental to the integrity of the game. I could be wrong, but at least he didn't bet on sports. Am I right? You know, he's only getting experience in the National Football League. He only played as a professional football player in a professional football game against other professional football players, and will now go back and play in Baton Rouge for a college football team against, you know, kids who, some of them who were in high school just this time last year. So I've been open-minded about a lot of things in college football. This one is a little too far, and again, it's just going to get worse. It's just going to keep going until either the NCAA is able to hold on to or grab some form of control, which I highly doubt. The other possibility is the Save College Sports Act actually passed. That'll be looked at this September. We'll certainly be covering that as it progresses. Or the Power 4 break away from the NCAA altogether and draft new rules to prevent this sort of thing. Let's do an ugly.
Whoa! This is worthless.
It's less than worthless, my boy.
The Big 12's monster deal is an abomination to everything that the Big 12 and Texas Tech stands for. So let me start by saying this. I don't have a problem with sponsorships in college sports. I'm old enough to remember the Southwest Conference presented by Southwest Airlines. Corporate sponsorship isn't the problem. I've always said that these universities and schools and conferences need to find ways to make money that isn't tied to TV, because that's what's been destroying the sport. So if you're making money and you're able to pay your bills and it's not completely dependent on a TV deal that could be taken away from you at any given moment, great. This is what this kind of stuff needs to happen. The problem, though, is when you sell a ton of inventory and you get almost nothing for it. And that's my issue with the Big 12's monster deal. Monster is reportedly paying around $20 million a year and that's for the entire conference, by the way, $20 million a year to put its name on Big 12 football and basketball, to put its logo on everybody's jerseys, Big 12 football fields, basketball courts, and even attach its name to the regular season. It's starting in 2026. It is Monster Big 12 football or Monster Big 12 basketball. That is an enormous amount of exposure for $20 million. By the way, exposure for a company that already has an enormous amount of exposure. This isn't like, you know, the Jack Link's beef jerky days of the old Big 12, where their, you know, company was getting a break and needed a break, and the Big 12 provided a break for whatever reason. And to put it in perspective, Texas Tech's individual deal with Galaxy, Tech's stadium naming rights agreement on its own. So we're talking about an agreement to just put your name and logo on a football field and parts of a stadium, one stadium for one school. That's worth $5 million a year. So Texas Tech, one school, is getting 5 times what the Big 12 is distributing per school from Monster, while Monster gets an enormous amount of exposure across the entire conference. And I can't help but think about the All-State deal that was talked about in 2024. The Big 12 reportedly explored selling the actual naming rights to the conference to All-State. There were talks that it would be the All-State 12 or the Big All-State Conference. Personally, big fan of the All-State 12. With estimates putting that deal at $30 to $50 million annually. An industry valuation suggested that the Big 12 naming rights could have been worth $30 to $60 million a year. through that. And that deal never happened, which is where, in my opinion, the Big 12 presidents really screwed up. And when I say Big 12 presidents, I'm talking about the old 15-1. I'm leaving Texas Tech out of this because, frankly, I think Texas Tech has been one of the few schools that hasn't acted like it's completely lost its mind over the last few years, despite the fact that I think a lot of people will disagree. But the rest of these presidents and chancellors, I think they got a little too high on their own horse. They apparently weren't willing to put the Big 12 name up for sale because they thought the conference was worth more, or they just thought, well, we're not going to play for a conference that sold its name, and we play for the Big 12 conference. We're not playing for the big All-State conference or whatever. To me, that sounds a little familiar. It sounds an awful lot like what happened to the Pac-12. Pac-12 had a television deal from ESPN worth around $30 million per school. They wanted more. The deal completely fell apart, and eventually the conference collapsed. I'm not saying the Big 12 is going to collapse here, but there's a lesson here. Don't confuse what you think you're worth with what the market is actually willing to pay. Coming from a real estate background, I can tell you, you can run comps, you can predict what you think the market actually is, but nothing is worth any more than what someone is actually willing to pay for it. Because now, 2 years after reportedly discussing a $30 to $50 million all-state naming rights deal, a brand, by the way, that people would have accepted a lot easier than Monster, the Big 12 is putting Monster's name all over the conference for $20 million a year. And if that weren't bad enough, then there's the execution. Good Lord, that logo is ugly. It's horrifying. Even if you're going to use Monster's green logo, you could have integrated it into the uniforms, into the Big 12 branding so much better. Instead, it looked like somebody slapped a black and green rectangle on everything. I've seen mock-ups of the Monster logo kind of right in the middle of the Big 12 logo. People would have been fine with that. And above all, and maybe this was a deal that Monster just was adamant about, and if you're asking me, then you should have told him no. You should have just said, this is a deal breaker, sorry. You don't even have to make the Monster logo match the school colors. Just use the white one. They've got two logos. Use the white one. It would have been fine. But instead, they've got this weird where it's like, we're not actually going to put the Monster logo on the Big 12. It's the Big 12 logo, and here's the Monster logo. But it's now on a big gaudy patch that's on every uniform, every basketball uniform, and every football and basketball court and field. And clearly the Big 12 doesn't like it either, by the way, because, let me pull this up. Look at some of the conference-owned promotional graphics. Can you see it? The Monster logo is so small, sitting at the bottom of the screen. It looks like the legal disclaimer at the bottom of a prescription drug commercial. Monster Energy Big 12 Basketball. Ask your doctor if Monster is right for you. And now the Big 12 is hiring a new director of partnerships whose job is to develop high-value corporate partnerships and generate significant revenue. That sounds a lot like the person who would have set up a deal with Monster. And I'm not saying somebody got fired over Monster. We don't know that. It could be a lot of reasons why they're hiring for that position, but the timing is certainly funny. And like I said, I'm not anti-sponsorship. I'm anti-stupidity. I'm anti-bad deals and bad executions. If you're going to sell your soul and sell the identity of your conference, at least get paid for it. Because right now, the Big 12 may have been too proud to sell the name of the conference. It ended up selling its entire soul for way, way less. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of your day with me here on the Flatland Sports Podcast. Whether you're listening from Lubbock, somewhere across the Great Plains of West Texas, or anywhere else around the world, I appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed the show, make sure that you like and subscribe. And of course, your thoughts, questions, accusations, and fits of rage are all welcome in the comment section. Let me hear them. And don't forget to check out the Flatland Sports Store. Pick up a hat, a t-shirt like the one I'm wearing, or some other Flatland Sports gear, and support the work we're doing here. Until next time, for Flatland Sports, I'm Christopher Johnston. This is the Flatland Sports Podcast. I'll see you on the next one, and Wreck and Tech.